guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have round 20 of Becca's Bookopoly. So if you guys are new here and you have no idea what Bookopoly is, this is the game that I play every single month to decide what books are going to be on my TBR. If you would like a full tour of the board and an explanation of all of the rules, I will link January's Bookopoly up here. And if you would like to catch up on any of the previous installments in this series, the full Bookopoly playlist will be in my description box. But for those of you who have been here for a while and you know what's going on, let's see how I did last month. So July's Bookopoly TBR was a little bit of a chunky stack. We had The City of Brass, which was a chance card, Children of the Whales Volume 5, which was a graphic novel or a manga, Good Me Bad Me by Ali Land, which was a thriller, Vicious by V. Schwab, which was a sci-fi, Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which was an adult fantasy, and The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, which was a dystopian. Now, I haven't read all of these books. I'm currently just over halfway through Good Me Bad Me, and I haven't started Assassin's Quest, and I'm filming this video a little bit later in the month than I usually do as well, so I know that I'm probably not even going to start Assassin's Quest. And to be honest, I cannot even excuse myself because currently at this point in the month, I've read 13 books in July. I only had to read 6 to complete my Bookopoly TBR, but I didn't even start my final book, which means that it is time for our very first punishment round of 2020. So way back in January's TBR, I did say that I was going to be mixing up for what we're doing for punishments, and I asked you guys to drop suggestions in my comments. Now, not only one of the best suggestions by far, but also the one that received the most likes from viewers was that I create a pot of bad prompts, which means that it's a little bit 50-50 over what's going to come out. So this pot has 13 undesirable prompts in it. It's like read a book over 500 pages, read a book that intimidates you, finish the last book that you DNF'd. So depending on which prompt we pull, it may work out in my favor. But regardless, this means that before we even get into August rolls, I am adding a book to my TBR. So without further ado, let us pick my punishment prompt. Try and get like down to the bottom. Can't grab any of them with nails. This one. Okay, I'm a little bit scared. Okay, you ready? Oh no! No! Okay, so before I started filming this video, I did ask you guys on Twitter to provide some of the prompts that were going to be going in this jar, and one of you guys suggested that I pick a book based on a rant review that I've watched. So let me just go get this book. So the last rant review that I actually watched was for Infinity Son by Adam Silvera. The rant review was from Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, and I feel like he has honestly cursed me because I sent him a photo of all of the prompts that were going in the jar before I filmed this video, and he said he wants What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera to come up because he hates that book, and I said that if rant review came up then it would be Infinity Son, which is a book that he just ranted about. So yeah, here we are. Thanks, Gavin. So this was a book that I received in an Illumicrate as an extra book of the month, and this is Adam Silvera's first fantasy. It's young adult. I believe that it has at least 3 perspectives in it, and it mainly follows 2 brothers, and one of them is trying to be an internet sensation or something like that. But yeah, I've heard not great things about this, not only from Gavin but also from my best friend Ryan, so I was a little bit iffy about reading it anyway, but now I got no choice. And now that that is out of the way, let us get into our first roll. So last month we ended on dystopian. First roll. And it's a double. And that one is a young adult fantasy. And kicking off an already not great start to a Bookopoly TBR, we have a double for our first roll. I'm going to pretend that this is okay. So our first prompt is young adult fantasy, and for that I'm going to be reading Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nyan. This was a gift from the lovely Kimberly, so thank you so much, Kimberly, for sending this to me. I read the first book in this series in 2018, I think, whichever year it was released, and I think I gave it like 3.5 stars, and I have been meaning to continue. It's got to the point now where I'm going to have to read a Sparks Notes version of the first book just to refresh myself on some of the details. But the first book, Girls of Paper and Fire, is about a girl who is from the paper caste, which means that she is human, and in this world there are 3 castes. I think the top one is the moon caste and they are demons. The bottom caste is paper, which are humans, and then I can't remember what the in-between caste is, but they are half-breeds in between demon and human. So our main character is selected to be one of the king's paper girls, and she has to go to the palace where the king lives, and she joins this group of paper girls who are essentially the king's concubines. This series also has a female-female romance, which my favorite parts of the first book were the female-female romance because I felt that the characters had really good chemistry, and the atmosphere because one, I really like East Asian inspired fantasies, and two, I really liked the descriptions of the different casts and just the landscaping of the world. Roll number 2. I cannot actually believe this. A paranormal romance. So roll number 2 is another double, so we already have a minimum of 8 books on this month's TBR. I'm not okay, guys. So this roll was paranormal, and for that one I will be selecting Dead as a Doornail by Charlene Harris. This is, I believe, if I picked up the right book, because sometimes I don't pick them up because all the book titles sound the same, but if this is the book that I am indeed reading, it is the 5th book in the Sookie Stackhouse series. I have been reading this series on and off. I don't love it. There are elements about it that I don't like, but there are also elements about it that I really like, mainly the romance aspects of this. But this follows a girl called Sookie Stackhouse who can read people's minds. Now, she works in a bar and she's pretty much known as like the town freak, and one day a vampire called Bill walks into her bar and she's very, very drawn to him because she cannot hear his thoughts like she can with everybody else. So this draws her in to the vampire world, and then we also have werewolves in here and shifters as well, I think. But I do believe from this point onwards the love interest is starting to shift further, and there are 2 love interests that I actually like. I hate Bill. Bill has no personality. But yeah, regardless, this is a really fun, really easy read that I kind of enjoy as like a guilty pleasure, but I don't really love the series. Roll number 3. 6. An adult fantasy. So roll number 3 is an adult fantasy, and I'm really annoyed at myself for not reading Assassin's Quest in July, because if I had, it meant that I could pick any book I wanted for adult fantasy, and there are a couple of sequels I'm desperate to get to. But alas, I need to read this for my book club, so for adult fantasy I'm going to be reading Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. The live show for this is going to be on the 16th of August at 8 PM UK time. If you guys are reading along and want to know when the live show is, I will be posting the announcement graphics soon. But this is the final book in the Farseer trilogy, which is the first trilogy in the Realm of the Elderling series, and this follows a young boy called Fitz who is abandoned by his maternal family and dropped off at the castle, where the people of the castle then have to take him to his father, who is actually the king in waiting. However, when Fitz arrives at the seat of the crown, he realizes that his father has just abdicated upon finding out about Fitz's existence and moved off to the countryside. So after that, nobody really knows what to do with him, and he is eventually trained up to be the royal assassin. Roll number 4. 3. A friend pick. So roll number 4 was friend pick, and I have Jade from Jadey Ray Reads on standby for this. But before we give her a call, I have a few predictions of what she might pick, so we'll see if I'm right. So essentially, Jade's friend pick is going to be a blessing because all of the predictions I have predicting that she picks one of 3 of them, I'm actually really excited to read, and I'm sad that I can't fit on this month's TBR. The first one is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, which is the 2nd book in the Mistborn trilogy. This is the book that I would have liked to have put in for adult fantasy. However, I shot myself in the foot by not reading Assassin's Quest. The only one of these predictions that I wouldn't be super excited about if Jade picked it is A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. This is a middle grade, the first book I believe in a trilogy that is heavily inspired by Russian folklore, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. But the other books in the predictions are ones I like desperately want to read right now. I would also really like to read this month Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I buddy read City of Brass with Starla from Starla Reads last month, and this is also the book that I picked for Jade for her TBR last month. And the book that I actually think may be the most likely she picks is Vengeful by V. Schwab. Jade and I have just started buddy reading the entire works of V. Schwab, which is actually Jade's favourite author, and in August we will be buddy reading Vengeful, so even if Jade doesn't pick this, it will end up on my TBR. So I'm kind of hoping that she does me a favour by putting this one on. However, if she does pick Kingdom of Copper or The Well of Ascension, I will be more than happy. So now that that's out of the way, let's see what she's actually going to put on my TBR. Hey!
Hello!
Are you excited?
Yeah.
I've run through my predictions, and I think you're definitely going to pick one of them. But I have 4 predictions.
Yeah, you have 4 predictions?
Yeah.
I think you're cleverer than that.
Yeah, I think, like, before you knew what was on my, like, the rest of my TBR, I thought you were going to go, like, I had 4 predictions for you, but I think, like, I know which one you're going to go for. So, yeah.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you prepared the very obvious choice that you need to read.
Vengeful, yeah. That was
By Victoria Schwab.
one of my predictions. The other ones I had in for you were actually, we had a really thick stack.
Oh really? Hold on, before you tell me, if you had already put Vengeful in somewhere else, I would have picked Kingdom of Commerce.
Well,
I'm sorry, but yeah, we've got to read it. It's online,
okay.
so you have to read it.
Yeah, I watched yours before I started filming and I was...
because it's massive. I've actually just started setting it for us.
Oh good, it's fast paced at least, so it shouldn't take too long.
The size of the sections are going to be pretty big.
Well, to be fair, looking at my TBR, I really need to read a lot because I had to take a punishment as well.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it's not good. Thank you for picking Vengeful.
alright.
And let me know what the sections are when you finish sectioning it off.
I will do.
Okay. Bye.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, so as predicted, Jade picked Vengeful by V. Schwab. This is the sequel to Vicious, which we have just finished buddy reading like a week ago. The first book in this series follows Victor and Eli, who were best friends in college, and it follows multiple timelines. So we have the time when they were best friends, and what they are doing there is figuring out how to create extraordinaries, which are essentially superheroes, and they discover that the way to do this is by having a near-death experience. So they kill themselves and each other to get these superhero powers, and then we have the present day timeline where Victor has just got out of jail and he has a score to settle with Eli because they are now mortal enemies. When we read Vicious, it was extremely fast paced. Our sections were about 60 pages per day and I definitely could have read more. As you heard Jade say, the sections for this month are going to be a little bit chunky, but considering the size of this book, which is nearly 600 pages, I'm not actually that worried about this one. Roll number 5. A book inspired by history. So rule number 5 was to read a book inspired by history, and I ummed and ahed about what to choose for this one, but I'm actually going to be reading one of the arcs that I was sent by Pushkin Press, and that is 3/5 by John Vircher. Now this one is not set in like ancient history, it is set in, I believe it's the 1980s or early 1990s, but it takes place during the O.J. Simpson trial and the LA riots. So like I said, it is not that historical, but the O.J. Simpson trial was before I was born, so I would say that it definitely counts. So this is the story of a young black man who is actually white passing, and he reconnects with a white friend who has just been released from jail. However, he finds out that while his friend was in jail, he was converted to white supremacy. So I'm definitely expecting this to be hard-hitting. It is own voices, written by a black author, telling the story of the author's own experiences during this time while he was a student in Pittsburgh. So I think it is definitely going to be interesting and impactful. And I'm glad that I get the chance to read it in August because the release date for this is October. I would like to pass this on to an Own Voices reviewer when I'm done with it. Roll number 6. 7. A community shelf card. A subscription box book. Next up we had a community chest card, and this is the prompt that I asked my patrons to pick. So I did put a poll on my Patreon page and there were 4 options. The options were Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This one is Lesbian Necromancers in Space, I believe. We also had Bonecryer's Moon by Catherine Purdy. This one is about a girl who ferries the spirits of the dead. However, for her to become a more senior Bonecryer, I guess, she has to kill the man who would be her true love. We also had House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin Craig. This one is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. And the final one we had is the one that I thought you guys would pick, but it received the least amount of votes. And that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is about a man who finds a book in the library. And I think the book is about doors and it has parallels to his real life. However, as I mentioned, surprisingly, you didn't pick this. And the winner of the vote was The Bonecryer's Moon. So as I mentioned, this follows a girl. Her job as a Bonecryer is to ferry the spirits of the dead into Goddess Alara's night heavens or Tyrus's underworld. The main character has been prepared since birth to become the matriarch of the Bonecryers. However, to do that, she has to kill the man that she's destined to love. I do believe we have a second perspective in here as well, which I'm assuming is the man that she's destined to love, and he has a vendetta against the Bonecryers because one of them killed his father. And this one is a book that I received in an Owlcrate, and I think it was the April one. And what will hopefully be our final roll. 7 again. And we are ending where we started with a young adult fantasy. And then finally finally, the final book on this month's very stressful TBR is going to be a young adult fantasy. We have come entirely full circle during this video, and for this one I have selected Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. There's a lot of young adult fantasy on this TBR actually. So this is the sequel to Wicked Saints, which I read last year. There were a lot of things that I loved about Wicked Saints, but there were also quite a few things that I didn't like, but I did say I would continue with the series, and fingers crossed it gets better, because it's not necessarily bad, but this book just has so much potential. So Wicked Saints has three main characters. We have Nadia, who is a cleric, and she's a special cleric because she can commune with multiple gods instead of just one. We have Seraphim, who is the prince of the country that Nadia's country is at war with, and his country practices blood magic. And then we also have Malachias, who is from the same country as Seraphim, but he is an escaped member of this really covert kind of spy institution within Seraphim's country that are kind of manufactured and mutated to become these grotesque creatures. So the first book had tons of plot twists that really took me by surprise. However, I felt like Emily A. Duncan did not really lay the groundwork for them. But I love how we have three morally grey characters in here. They all have dubious intentions, and we have loyalties and betrayals happening left, right and centre. So I'm very excited to be continuing with this series in August. And also a huge thank you to Molly from Mind of Molly, as she gifted this to me for my birthday. So this is my August TBR. We have 8 books on here, and 2 or 3 of them are quite chunky as well, so please guys wish me luck. I finally got out of my reading slump in July. I read a whole ton of books, so this stack I would say is definitely doable. However, as we also know from July, I have difficulty sticking to my actual TBR, and I tend to stray off occasionally. So I do think I can read 8 books in August, but whether the 8 books that I read are the 8 books from the stack are an entirely different matter. However, saying that, aside from that TBR, I do not actually plan on participating in any readathons in August, and if I do participate in any, they are likely to be 24-hour or 48-hour readathons and things like that. So fingers crossed I can actually get through the stack. But that is it for this month's Bookopoly TBR. Thank you so much to everybody who contributed a prompt for my punishment options over on Twitter. A big thank you to Jade as well for making an appearance and selecting Vengeful for me so I could actually get it onto my TBR because it wouldn't have fit anywhere else. Of course, a big thank you to my patrons for voting on the subscription box book, and also a big fuck you to Gavin for hating Infinity Sun, which means that I have to read it this month. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them if you have. But aside from that, that is it from me today guys, so please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter and Patreon if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.